Now I'm going to try something a little bit different today and give you a video explanation of a shot that I posted up on Facebook. Now my name is Okello Dunkley from DSLR Workshops, and usually I teach my classes live, but I'm going to start recording Take Your Camera Off Program Mode Part 1 and Part 2, and this is sort of my first attempt at getting comfortable in front of the camera. So I figured it would be easier just to show you how I approach my shot, because one of the things I noticed on Facebook is that a lot of the guesses, the ISOs were low, relatively low, 100 ISO, 200, 400, and I'm usually much higher than that. So I started wondering like how you guys are approaching your shots, and I wanted to just give you a sense of how I approach mine. Now, it goes without saying that you are going to be in manual mode for the shot. Now, why manual mode? Even though during the classes I talk about aperture priority a lot before we get into manual mode, because I think aperture priority is sort of like your training wheels, and I don't want to send people out just in manual mode and they're going to freak out when they get a picture that's really dark or really bright and not sure exactly where to go. But one of the downsides of aperture priority is your shutter speed is not stable. So let's say I'm shooting this concert and let's say I got my shutter speed up to 3/20th of a second. And right now I'm actually not even moving the camera. I just stopped moving it and you can see it's still shifting a little bit. So let's say I was at 3/20th of a second and I moved the camera just a little bit and all of a sudden I'm at 1/25th and we'd have a blurred shot. So that's why I'm always in manual mode. I can lock my shutter speed. Right now, I'm moving my shutter speed. Right now, I'm not touching it, but I just want you to see that wherever I move the camera, it is going to stay right where I put it. So I can lock in these settings of 320, 3.2, and 1600 ISO, and I don't have to worry about anything changing. So let's go ahead and take a look at this shot. And just to show you these settings up here, those are settings that are captured by the camera in the metadata. You see we're in manual mode. It's an NEF file, which is a raw file. And the first thing you see up in the top left, that is your shutter speed. 1/320, fraction of a second, 3/20th of a second. Some cameras may express this as just 320, but 320 and 1/320 are interchangeable. And 3.2 is my aperture here. So that is right in the middle of those three settings, and my ISO is at 1600. We actually had someone guess 1600 ISO f, I think it was, yeah, 3.2 and 400th of a second. So they were really close. They just missed the shutter speed by a little bit. Now the next number is my focal length, 200 millimeters. And if you have been in my class, you know I love prime lenses, mainly shooting with prime lenses. And I shot this concert with just two lenses. I have more in my bag, but I only use my 85 millimeter prime lens, 85 millimeter 1.4, and I have a 200 millimeter f2. And I had a limited area where I could actually walk around, so it's not like I could have used a bunch of lenses anyway. Now, I'm going to go ahead and circle the ISO because that's probably the first thing I'm going to go for when I walk into a room. Now, it's not always, but for me, I always want to get my ISO in the neighborhood. So I would say probably want to go for your ISO first, because if you were to walk in this room and it was almost pitch black, you would turn up that ISO. And if you walked in here and there was just sun streaming down from, let's say, skylights, you would turn that ISO down. Now, the next setting I'm going to consider is my aperture. So we're at 3.2, and I'm usually not going to be at the widest aperture unless I have to be. And you can see there's a decent amount of light in this church, so I'm going to go up a little bit higher. Of course, I want the attention on the conductor, so that's why a little bit wide. And then the last setting is the shutter speed. Now, I might be saying it last, but for me, it's the most important, because if he's not frozen, we don't have a shot. So the most important thing for me to get this shot is making that shutter speed fast enough, because if I were to miss on my exposure, let's say ISO too high, aperture too wide or too small, anything like that, and my picture turns out a little dark or a little bright, I still have that raw file as a backup. So most importantly for me is to walk out of that concert with frozen shots. And if there are any other things I need to tweak, I can do that a little bit later. So make sure your shutter speed is fast enough, because if it is, then you have no one to blame but yourself for a blurred shot. And if you look down and you see a blurred shot, it's as simple as making your shutter speed faster. And that's why I'm in manual mode, because if I switch over to Lightroom, and let's see how this transition is. And this is in Lightroom right here. And for me, the benefit of manual mode is just being able to have that nice consistent shot where I don't have to worry about the shutter speed dipping to 100th of a second or 1/25th. And you see that's the shot that I posted up. I can just shoot. You don't have to think about anything. And one of the things I try to tell people is, when it comes to manual mode, I almost tell people, just put it in manual mode and relax. Because when I can put it in manual mode, I have my settings locked in, my ISO, my aperture, my shutter speed. I don't have to worry about anything unless the light gets brighter, gets darker, or somebody starts moving a lot faster, which in this case, it didn't happen. So once I lock in those 3 settings, I can just relax. So don't be scared of manual mode. That is how you're going to get your shots. So thanks for listening. I'm going to have a lot more videos for you guys to see. So if you have any questions, go to DSLR Workshops and you can find the class. Thanks.